We increasingly need high quality and timely evidence, and we need advocates in government and outside of government to make sure that evidence is used well for public policy making. Impact evaluations are particularly well suited to many of the questions that face us because they permit us to estimate the net impact of the programs that governments fund. But what we've observed is even as the number of impact evaluations and even the quality has increased, there are gaps in their use. So in response to the challenges that have been observed, the Center for Global Development several months ago established a working group led by Manda, Glassman, and myself to consider how the next generation of investments in impact evaluations can increase their usefulness, their relevance and responsiveness to public policy concerns.
About 15 years ago, Ruth Levine did this working group, When Will We Ever Learn?, which looked at the paucity of evidence on what worked in social policy in low and middle income countries and led to the founding of 3IE, and coincidentally a lot of other stuff happened alongside. It was just the blossoming of the field. So it's a good time to revisit and see where we've come, where progress has been made, what we can learn, particularly looking at what is the policy demand and use of this kind of information.
Finding that combination, that sweet spot between timeliness and academic rigor. How do we find spaces for entities like this to grow and prosper is really, I think, the challenge of our times.
The business of development for us as institutions, as governments, as academics that we have seen, and other stakeholders is basically a means to an end. To be able to understand the effectiveness of achieving that end, we need to go back to some tools like evaluations to really know the outcome of our impact and therefore the good we might be doing.
The COVID crisis was unique. It gave us all a chance to quickly shift and really focus on how we could really walk the talk around evidence-based policymaking, but in a very distinct environment. So I think as our government partners, we're trying to rethink their tools, whether it's about education provision, social protection, cash assistance, all of those normal emergency responding tools that might be deployed suddenly needed to be reevaluated, just given the very distinct nature of the pandemic. And in a similar way, I think it forced us to rapidly rethink our research and policy engagement tools.
I think one of the things that has helped us, at least, is to acknowledge that, government is not some kind of monolithic entity. There are human beings who populate government, and that personal kind of trust that you can build over years is very important to remain relevant within the policy scape, but also to be as helpful as possible despite the constraints that they were facing.
There is growing acknowledgement within the global development community of the indispensable role that researchers and research organizations who understand the local context and local decision-making needs play in policy engagement. In tandem, there is also a renewed focus on building more partnerships that link these researchers and organizations with policy opportunities as a key way to increase demand for and use of policy-relevant evidence.
With these time constraints and resource constraints and speed and pressure, it has led us to take on new methods, to think creatively, to come up with a kind of new and different ways to answer questions that agencies are asking and wrestling with. So I'm hope that this innovation and creativity and interdisciplinary collaboration and emphasis on creative data sources continues moving forward.
I wish a lot more that was being published openly, fully and transparently with all the data and all the code, so that, we get both the speed and the rigor fairly quickly.
This is how much money is at stake to have an evidence-based approach. It's big dollars, and you can save big dollars.
All of us, certainly I, sort of have during the COVID experience thought, if not now, when will we ever see the use of the best available evidence for the most consequential decision making? So if not now, when?